Hello and welcome to Enchantment of Eternity's top 20 worst episodes of Star Trek the original series and Star Trek the animated series. This video is a part of a series of videos where I reviewed every episode of Star Trek the original and animated series one season at a time. In this video, it's part one of the conclusion of my coverage of TOS, where I will rank my top 20 worst episodes, and then we'll make another video where I rank my top 20 best episodes, or top 30 best episodes, sorry. So I always do this when I cover shows season by season. I'll make these super long videos where I'll do a countdown of my worst, my least favorite, and my favorite episodes. I usually proportion it where I'll do like the best will be much bigger than the worst list. Like originally I had planned for the best list to be 40 episodes and the worst list to be 20. However, when I went to do the best list, I couldn't come up with 40, like number 40 through 31 were just like episodes I thought were okay or pretty good, and so I shortened it to a top 30. But as for the worst list, all 20 were pretty bad. so it is this one is skewed because I actually think there's a lot of terrible episodes of the original animated series. I didn't think, I'm not a huge fan of TOS. As I said, I grew up in the 90s. I prefer the 90s Trek, and I kind of, and it's just, I don't really like the shows from the 60s because it's really outdated, and it is, and a lot of ham acting, but some classic episodes too, and I still do enjoy it. However, I'm going to get into what I really don't like about the original and the animated series and count down my 20 worst. And as I said, this video will go as long as it needs to go. So, if you want something more succinct, you can check out my top 10 best episodes of the original series. I also do a top 5 worst list. That's more succinct for you. This video is not going to be. It's the whole point of it. Anyway, So one last thing I'm going to say about my countdown is I want to temper your expectations, because some episodes that that are generally considered to be the worst amongst the original series, you may not find on this list. Spock's brain! I actually don't think Spock's brain is as bad as everyone thinks it is. To me, it's like a kid's show cartoon, and it's comical, and it's kind of a so bad is good way. I don't think it's one of the worst that Star Trek has ever done. Sorry, it didn't quite make my list. And then there's another episode that will go unnamed that a lot of people, for some reason, will always escape my comprehension, always include on worst lists and say it's one of the worst episodes of Star Trek, which you will not find on this list. You will find over on my best list, and I will fight anyone on that. It deserves to be in the best list, not the worst list. And if you've seen my videos before, you know which episode I'm talking about. But anywho, as I count down the top 20 worst episodes, I give each episode a rating between 1 and 10, 1 being the worst, 10 being the best. So my rating for each episode that I'm about to mention on the list is going to pop up on a little card every time I get into a different bracket of ratings. And I'll start with my 3 ratings, which is low. Pretty low, because I'm talking about the worst episodes. So let's go ahead and kick this off. So let's start with my number 20, This Side of Paradise. I never liked this episode. This was a weed is bad, marijuana is bad, guys. They're Star Trek's version of Reefer Madness, where everyone gets intoxicated by these plants that make them like want to live on this world that otherwise would be uninhabitable for human beings, and they all like act all stoned and high. And there's even a scene with Spock because he hooks up with this girl, and there's a scene where they're like, it's like they're on LSD. They're looking at clouds going, oh, well, man, that looks like a bunny rabbit. And that fucking annoys me. I hate drug PSA episodes. It's funny because TNG did one, but actually theirs was pretty good. But this is just like Reefer Madness nonsense bullshit, where it's written by people who don't really understand drugs, and it's like, oh man, look at this, and the whole plot of like plants like shooting their spores and making them all like, ooh, blah, blah. The funniest thing in the world is, I laugh hysterically at this episode because it's so terrible, is when all of Kirk's crew have been taken over by the plants, but he's the only holdout, and he's on the bridge trying to get people to come back, but no one will come back, and he's like, what will I do? And then out of nowhere, all of a sudden, there's a plant that's on the bridge. It just pops up out of nowhere and goes boom, and shoots him. All of a sudden, it's like, what? Did that plant sneak up on him? Was the plant following him around? How the fuck did that plant get there on the bridge? And how could he not see it? How could it sneak up? And I literally laughed my ass off when I see that. When I saw that scene, when Kirk is just on the bridge, and all of a sudden it's like boom, right in his face. It's so dumb. However, this episode only got a 3 out of 10 and not 2 or 1 because I did like the Spock breakup scene. I actually thought that was emotional and powerful. It actually kind of got to me because Spock had hooked up with this girl and they had plans to go, get stoned and watch clouds and find shapes in them and shit. But Kirk, the asshole that he is, cured Spock of his stoneness disease, and he no longer wanted to be with her, and he had to inform her that he was leaving her, and she could like sense that something was wrong, and he had to like let her down gently that he wasn't going back to the planet and wasn't going to be with her. That was actually powerful. I think that was DC Fontana's spin on this episode. She was really good at writing for Spock and Spock romance, but the rest of the episode was total garbage, and I thought it sucked. So next, let's get into my number 19, which is The Enemy Within. I'm Captain Kirk! It's one of my favorite moments of the whole series. I was like, that's the clip you want to show to illustrate like William Shatner's ham acting. My God, there's so much ham acting. Okay, so the premise of this, they have a Cocker Spaniel that they put a horn on and called a strange creature. And the premise is that they beam up, that they have accidentally beam up Kirk, and they split him into two: the good Kirk and the evil Kirk. And the evil Kirk sexually harass and tries to rape Yeoman Rand, and then the good Kirk, along with Spock and McCoy, gaslight Yeoman Rand to make her feel like it's all her fault. First they don't believe her, and then they're saying it's all her fault. And then Spock even has this line at the end of the episode saying, "Oh, you liked being sexually harassed, didn't you?" Like, okay, so this is what I'm talking about was outdated. I give it no fucking passes. I heard someone say, oh, it's a different era in the 60s. You got to take that into account. Fuck that shit. I don't give it any pass for this disgusting bullshit. And, yeah, the ham acting was terrible as well, so screw this episode. Anywho, Alright, so now we'll move over to my number 18, getting into the animated series. We'll talk about The Infinite Vulcan. The episode where the shifty-eyed crew beams down, and there's these weird pterodactyl things that chase them and go... Well, which episode of the animated series are you talking about? That's every episode. But anyway, they encounter these weird plant people, and at first they're like, oh, come, see our world. And then all of a sudden they just start turn on them and do their elbow running. And for no good reason. And then they say, oh, we're here to serve my master. And the master's this giant dude. And he kidnaps Spock and turns him into a giant Spock. And then we have, I think there's a normal Spock too, and then there's giant Spock and normal Spock and the giant Spock. I don't know, I can't remember what happens because this episode sucks. It's so dumb. Anyway, let me now get into, move over to my number 17, The Paradise Syndrome. An incredibly racist episode. Again, no pass. I don't care if it came out in the 60s, and I don't care if a lot of TV shows of Westerns were just as racist, if not more so. No pass. None. None for me. No mercy. Where it portrays Native Americans, it names all these different tribes, but then portrays them as all the same, as a bunch of primitive morons who call anyone a god who appears to them. And Kirk falls in love with a woman who just digs him because she thinks he's a god. And then he does this stupid, more cheesy, over the top Shatner acting, and they have the evil Native American, which are all played by not Native Americans anyway, and he's obviously evil and obviously out to get Kirk because he's jealous because this is such a boring cliche plot. And then Spock beams down there, able to save Kirk, and again regains his memory. Now again, this episode would have gotten a 1, but it's saved by this one scene at the end of the episode where Kirk has to let his wife die and say goodbye to her as she dies. Like, okay, that was touching, I gotta say, but the fact I never built a relationship in the first place kind of deflates it, but it's still a touching scene. Anyway, let's go ahead and move over to the next episode, which is Patterns of Force. Nazis in space. So Kirk and Spock beam down to an alien world. They travel light years throughout this vast space, this vast galaxy where planets are far in between. And they beam down, and they've beamed down to 1940s Nazi Germany. And they're dressed like Nazis. They got swastikas, Nazi uniforms. Now, the season 2 is infamous for all these, alternate Earth episodes, which was why I don't like season 2 very much. But this is one of the worst because why you can have Nazis? Like, why bring back Nazis? Like, this is so dumb. But what's worse is that the explanation the show gives is that there's a historian who visits an alien world, and he sees that the world is in trouble, so he decides to restructure their society based off of Nazi Germany, because he felt like the Nazi Germany was the most efficient society in history. And then he's shocked when this society that he restructured to be like Nazi Germany starts murdering and enslaving a different group of aliens and creating a Holocaust. Like, this is supposed to be like this brilliant historian. You're shocked that once you tell the society to be like Nazi Germany, that they act like Germans and create a Holocaust. Like, it's so dumb. Like, it's... Anyway. let me get into the next episode, which is number 15, A Private Little War. This is supposed to be a Vietnam analogy. It's a very poor one again, and it's also reads like a Western. And Kirk, it's just a boring episode. He beams down. And he has this friend who's a native on the planet who he met before, and he has a wife who's a witch doctor, and she tries to bewitch Kirk. And then we get to see, people, the Klingons are arming the other side, and we see them try to rape this woman after she tries to betray her own husband and Kirk, and watch her die, and then Kirk gets, I don't know, this is I just really didn't like this episode. It's a ball of nonsense. Anyway, let's go to my number 14, getting back into the animated series because I want to be all inclusive here. The Practical Joker. So this is the episode where I know it's supposed to be comedy. It's supposed to be a kids show too. It's not supposed to be taken too seriously. It's where the Enterprise starts running practical jokes. The premise is so dumb. Now, again, you might be like, but Mark, you're being stupid. It's supposed to be dumb as a cartoon. I don't care. It's even for a cartoon. Like, they're good episodes of the animated series. This is just a big ball of bullshit. Like, the Enterprise running practical jokes. All right, but I will admit, like the one scene where Kirk's uniform says Kirk is a jerk on the back, that was funny. But the rest of the episode, like, the practical jokes are dumb. Like, they're at dinner and all their drinks have, like, the cups have holes in them and it spills drink on them. Like, that's a stupid practical joke. And then Scotty goes to the replicator and starts, like, spitting out all this food at him. Like, and then, let's talk about the hilarious practical joke when the computer nearly, like, kills Uhura, McCoy, and I think Sulu, who are on the holodeck. Yeah, there's a holodeck in this episode. They call it something else, but they're on the holodeck, and the computer like first throws them in the ditch they can't get out of, and when they get out of the ditch, they like make the environment like an Arctic and makes them like freeze to death. Oh, that's hilarious. Trying to freeze them to death. What a great practical joke. And then, like, it's so dumb. Like, I can't stand this. I think it's even dumb for a cartoon. I'm sorry. When they're fighting like the Romulans or some shit in this episode, and then Kirk like is running from the trying to get this fucking practical joke thing off the ship, and they need to go through this cloud in order to do so, and he's like oh no, don't go in the cloud, don't go in there, I would be afraid of the cloud. And then of course the computer's like, yes, I'm going in the cloud, and that actually does exactly what he wants. I'm sorry, it's terrible voice acting and shifty animation, any shifty eyes. Anyway, let me get into what am I up to? Number 13, Operation Annihilate. So this is an episode where Kirk, it's the only mention of his brother. They beam down and find his brother dead. And so that's why I'm really not interested to see his brother in Strange New Worlds, because it's a nothing character. Like, nobody cares. And he wasn't even shown to be in Starfleet. But, anywho, this episode has had these weird jellyfish stingray type thingies that float in the air and attach themselves to people and cause like an immense amount of pain, so much pain that it drives them mad, and they start to kill other people and shit. Which sounds like a somewhat interesting premise, if not very 60s B horror movie schlock. But it's actually boring. Like, most of this episode just deals with Spock after he's been attacked by this thing and sitting in sickbay in so much pain and trying to hide the pain. They're trying to figure out what to do with Spock, and they realize that there's this super lights that could kill the things, and so they blind Spock. And then they realize that actually they didn't need to blind Spock, that they could have just injected the type of something, radiation or something, without actually using the bright lights in order to kill the thing. And they're like, oh my god, I'm so sorry we unnecessarily blinded you. And then all of a sudden he can see again, and Spock's like, oh yeah, that's right, my Vulcan inner eyelid or some bullshit. So, like, aren't you aware these things exist? Like, why are you surprised? Why didn't you mention this in the first place? I don't know. This episode is really boring. Didn't like it. Anywho, we'll move over to my number 12, Mudd's Passion. Again, getting back to the animated series. Now, I hate Harry Mudd episodes. I hate them. I hate Harry Mudd in general. I don't like him. Didn't like his reappearance in the animated series. But I actually upgraded this episode from a 1 to a 2. And I originally called this the worst episode of the animated series. And I've actually changed my mind. There's an episode that's worse on this list from the animated series that I'll get to shortly. Several, we'll say. Because, yeah, this episode has Harry Mudd in it. I can't fucking stand Harry Mudd, and it's just goofy and dumb. But it also destroys Christine Chapel's character, because it's about Harry Mudd has these like love potion that will make anyone love you, and Nurse Chapel decides to buy it from Harry Mudd to use it on Spock. That really destroys her character. Like, she wouldn't do that. She wouldn't deal with this despicable outlaw that everyone knows is despicable, to purchase something that's going to force Spock to have a romance with her against his will. And she's really pissed off at Harry when it doesn't work. And then when it does work, it's like, I don't know. I can't buy that she would actually do this. And the whole thing about Harry Mudd selling this love potion is just terrible. However, the reason why I upgraded this episode slightly and it's no longer called the worst of the animated series, because I have to admit there are a few scenes that I laughed at that I found funny. Particularly when they're on the bridge and Spock is just like, everyone's normal at this stage, and Spock is just like, Christine, I love her. And then they show, like, cut to everyone with, like, really shocked looks, like, what? And then they have that A-Rex guy, that alien dude. I fucking love him. Anyway, they have him all of a sudden, after they cut to everyone, like, looking shocked, they show him and he just goes, woo! I thought that was hilarious. And then this other scene later in the episode where, like, Kirk is, like, being chased by this giant monster going, and he tries to call the ship to beam him up, and there's a fucking couple, like, dancing in the transporter room. They're doing like a waltz or something, like classical music, and just doing I don't know if that's laughing with the episode or at the episode. I'm not sure at this stage, but I had to slightly lift it from its worst status for those two scenes. But episode still sucks, and I still hope to never see it again. Anywho, let's get into the next episode, which is the Immunity Syndrome. So this is the episode where giant amoeba attacks Enterprise, which is a stupid, nonsensical bullshit premise, and it's like, it's boring. It's really boring. It's basically just, Spock and McCoy arguing over who can sacrifice their lives. Spock wins the argument. Yeah, he doesn't actually die. And they're in it's just they have a lot of these weird sound effects that, like, give me a headache and just make me feel sick watching it. And plus I'm looking at a giant amoeba, like, taking up the galaxy. I don't know. It's just, I can't stand this episode. Anyway, let me get into my number 10, Wolf in the Fold. So this is the episode where Scotty's accused of murder because, you know, he's hanging out with the belly dancer, and because apparently he's in a I hate women's phase or something, and Kirk thinks it's a great idea to like play wingman and have him hook up with the exotic dancer to like what. Okay. I don't know. It's the 60s. I don't know. But anyway, so he's accused of murder, and then they find out that the murderer is actually Jack the Ripper, who's been going around as this alien being that goes from planet to planet and kills a bunch of women because they're frail. That's what the episode tells you, and they scare easily, and this thing, it feeds off of fear. And then once they find out that you know, this one dude who is like a official on the planet or whatever, they find out that he is Jack the Ripper. It leaves his body and starts floating around the ship going, "Oh, I'm gonna kill you, murder, murder, murder." It's the cheesiest thing I've ever seen. And what I cannot stand these sci-fi episodes that try to present Jack the Ripper as some sort of alien or supernatural being. He was just a rich dude who paid off the government, who was easily to buy off to not go after him. That's it. Was not a fucking alien. Was not a fucking supernatural being. And it's so cheesy because they're like, oh, because at one point they're like, oh, list all the times that there have been multiple murders of women, like 4 or more throughout history. If this was accurate, they would have been sitting there for like 48 hours listening to all of. Unfortunately, yes, there's been a hell, especially if you're talking about this 200 years in the future, and there's tons of other planets to keep into account. That's it. I don't know. That bothered me. The whole thing. We're gonna kill your high pitched squeaky voice. Really bothered me. Again, it's kind of funny though. The solution was to make everyone really stoned, and it was kind of funny when that alien guy was like, "I'm gonna murder you," and they had the stone people just go, "Oh yeah, you're gonna murder me." But no, it was nonsensical. It's just absolute bullshit. Alright, top 9, worst of the worst. Let's get into it. Let's start with my number 9. Again, getting back to the animated series, Once Upon a Planet, which is the sequel to Shore Leave. Now, I do not like the episode Shore Leave, never had. I thought it was a pretty dumb nonsense. However, as you will note, it did not make my top 20 worst list, so I don't think it's that bad. But the sequel to it on the animated series was just stupid, where there's like the supercomputer turns evil for no good reason and starts killing people. It's like, to me, this is worse than the whole thing of the holodeck being a murder machine. It was supposed to be a fun entertainment thing, but it often tries to kill people. But here there's a whole planet where the whole point is to enjoy yourself and relax and have amusement, and then all of a sudden everything just keeps trying to kill you all the time. I don't know, I just really did not like this episode. So we'll get into my number 8, The Apple, or as I like to refer to it as the ultimate red shirt episode. The episode where red shirts get killed off in the most ludicrous and ridiculous ways, and as probably the most red shirts killed in one episode. And so one red shirt gets killed by exploding rocks. Another red shirt gets killed by lightning striking him, and another red shirt, I believe, gets killed by eating of something that's poison. But my favorite death is the red shirt who gets killed by one of the native dudes doing a karate chop to the shoulder. that's apparently lethal. And then this is a very stereotypical cliche plot done in the original series several times before and better, and stuff like Return of the Archons or whatnot. Although it's still not that great, but it at least didn't suck as much as this one did, where there's a supercomputer, evil supercomputer that's controlling these people, and Kirk has to, come in and save the day by destroying the supercomputer that these native people absolutely rely on for food, education, health, and Kirk just kills their only source of nourishment, of survival, and it just fucks off. I was like, you guys will be fine. I wanted to see the cut to, like, the post-credit scene that cuts to a week later where they're all dead. Thanks to Kirk. No, I mean, you can rationalize it and say that they sent the Federation team to help them. They just didn't mention it on screen. But I don't know. It's just I hate this episode. I hate the red shirt cliche because it makes Kirk out to be a terrible captain, and all these people die and he doesn't give a shit about them. Anyway, let's move over to the next episode, Mudd's Women. Now, you thought I forgot about you, Harry Mudd. You think I would only have one of your appearances in this countdown? Well, you thought wrong, Mr. Mudd. You're fucking suck. This is the episode where they have a fat guy pimping hot chicks and off to some lonely miners, and they're being like, hey, check out the selling wives, basically. And Kirk's, totally cool with this. Well, to be fair, he was didn't really want them to do it, but then got backed in the corner. But still, he seemed okay with the whole concept of it. But anywho, and then there's these magical pills that turn these ugly women absolutely beautiful and make them irresistible to men, except for the fact that we find out that it's just a fucking placebo. Yet, when they take it, they instantly, like, the lighting and the makeup instantly changes. Like, this is a magical, like, it controls the lights around them that make it brighter when they take the pill. But it's all placebo, so it doesn't matter. Fuck, I hate this episode. Anyway, let me get into the next episode. My number 6 worst episode of the original series / TOS, or TAS, sorry. TOS / TAS. Anyway, number 6, Assignment Earth. So the Enterprise is this. The episode starts off with the captain's log, where Captain Kirk says, "We have traveled back in time to the 20th century in order to do historical research." The fuck you have? No, you haven't. You have not. Why the fuck would the Enterprise travel back in time and risk destroying the timeline for no good goddamn reason? They're not fucking time historians. Now, you may say, ooh, but they fucking did the same thing in the TAS episode. God damn it. Whatever the fuck that one is called. The one with Spock and the Guardian Forever. You could say, oh, but they were doing the same thing in that episode. They were, Yesteryear. That's what it's called, Yesteryear. Anyway, you could say, oh, they were doing the same thing in that episode. They were using the Guardian Forever for historical research, which I also didn't buy. However, at least in that case, they were with, like, historians, and they were just aiding the historians. Now, granted, why would they need Starship Captain and First Officer to aid historians? But at least it lends some credibility to it. But here, like, the whole fucking ship goes back in time and risks distorting the timeline for no reason. Anyway, there is a reason, is so Gene Roddenberry could hide his pitch for his crappy show about some alien who has these magical powers and who is trying to stop a nuclear war from happening or some shit, and has a quirky secretary and a cat who he talks to and kind of turns into his hot chick or something. I don't know. It was a stupid premise. There's a reason why the show didn't get picked up. It looks so dumb, and this episode was just a giant excuse for Roddenberry to pitch his crappy idea, and Kirk and Spock were just like bystanders who pop up every once in a while and do nothing. They do nothing. There's no point. And then being here, this has nothing to do with Star Trek. It's crap. And to make it even worse, it should be telling, though, that the only Trek canon thing that references this episode is Star Trek Picard Season 2. Talk about crap. Crap inspired by crap. Anyway. Anywho, top 5 time. Let's get into the top 5 worst episodes. So let's start with my number 5, which is, in fact, the worst episode of the animated series, The Magics of Mega 2. So, Enterprise encounter this crazy looking dude who's like, oh, let's do magic, and it turns out to be Satan or some bullshit, Lucifer, I guess. And then the other aliens put Kirk and his crew on trial because they were put on trial during the Salem witch trials or something, so they kind of recreate it and all dress up like pilgrims or some shit, which is so fucking stupid. The Salem witch trial had nothing to do with actual witches, but set that aside, because, you know, WandaVision had it that way, and that's fine. Like, I still like WandaVision, but this is just nonsense. And it has, like, this scene where, like, anyone can do magic in this realm, apparently, so Spock is like, let me think very hard. And, like, shoot shit out of his hands, or some bullshit. It's just, like, oh, God, it just makes my head hurt. I can't talk about it anymore. It's so dumb. Anyway, that's my number 5. Let's get into my number 4 worst episode of TOS, and that is The Savage Curtain. Abraham Lincoln floating in space. Okay, so now we'll get into my... No. I mean, what else is there to say? Abraham Lincoln is sitting in his chair on the view screen floating in space. Now, I don't give a fuck what bullshit excuse you come up with to try to justify that. That is some dumb shit right there. And the bullshit excuse they did come up with does not fly. Like, these alien creatures, they recreate the historical figures. They have Sirach and Kirk and Spock and Abraham Lincoln in a battle to the death with Genghis Khan and 3 other, like, made up historical figures. One of them being Kalis going, help me, Spock. Anyway, so they have him in the battle to the death, so that these aliens can learn about good and evil. But hey, that doesn't make any sense. Why are you gonna recreate historical figures? And, you know, I'm a big supporter of Abraham Lincoln. Don't get me wrong, and I think he should be revered. But how is he good? Like, I don't know. Isn't that a very simplistic thing? And Genghis Khan is evil, but Abraham Lincoln is good. Like, as I said, like, I think he was a great historical figure, but he started a civil war and killed a whole bunch of people. Now, it did free the slaves, but I don't think that was his main motivation for doing so. At least not. The main motivation was, you know, the cash money, but he did accomplish good. But anyway, and Genghis Khan, well, he's evil, but then other historical figures not so evil. I don't know. And why does having these historical figures like fight each other? How does that tell this alien anything about good and evil? It doesn't. He should have philosophical discussions with Kirk or whatever if he wants to learn about good and evil. This is just nonsense. It's just bullshit excuse to have this stupid plot where they could hero worship Abraham Lincoln and have him fight Genghis Khan. Urgh! It's so stupid. Anyway, so let me get into my number 3 worst episode of the original series, and that is Cat's Paw. Captain Kirk! Ooh, Captain Kirk! superimpose over top of Kirk and Spock to make it try to look huge, but it's so fucking obvious. It's like Kirk and Spock are watching a projection of a cat going. Yeah, these two like aliens act like they use like all these silly, like goofy Halloween terms like sorcerer and use my magic, and they have the voodoo. They take the Enterprise every candle, and then I bet you credits to Navy Beans doing this up with the monkeys version of monkeys. Hey, we're the monkeys version of Chekhov, and get out. And then Spock and Scotty and Sulu are like acting like zombies for no reason. It's just it sucks. It sucks. Anyway, yeah, I know this is very, very analytical. Anyway, let me get into my number 2 worst episode of the original series, and that is heading into Eden, yeah, brother. The Way to Eden. So this is the episode where they got these space hippies that come on the ship, and they act like a bunch of spoiled brats who are sit and block the way to the transporter room, going, don't go, for no good reason. And they yell at Kirk and call him Herbert. And then Kirk and Spock act like the damn, they act like the grumpy old men. Like, what's this with all these freaking young people? Get off my lawn! And then they play music over the intercom with this ensign. Why are they playing this music on the bridge? I don't know, but this ensign's in there going, dun, 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 dun. But what's worse about this episode is that it is a negative criticism of the hippie music movement. It's basically saying that you fucking idiot kids who don't know what the fuck you're talking about should just shut the hell up, support the war, stop bitching about all the racism that's occurring. Who cares about, black people not being able to have the same rights as white people and being murdered and lynched by the KKK. Shut the fuck up, you dumb hippies, and stand in line! That's what this episode is saying, basically. Oh, yeah, shut the fuck up and go support the Vietnam War, because it's totally justified, and shut the fuck up about civil rights and equal rights. You hippies don't know what the fuck you're talking about. You're a bunch of immature kids who should just shut the hell up! In other words, it's got the worst social commentary, well, second worst, I'm about to get into the worst, of any Star Trek episode in the entire franchise. It was written by people who don't understand what Star Trek should stand for, and further didn't understand how important to history the fucking hippie movement would be, and how much good they did for societies. So, hey, I got a better idea. Instead of hippies shutting the fuck up, why don't you writers who wrote this episode shut the fuck up? Oh, it was written by like a 60-year-old dude or something. He would go on to write like after school specials in the 80s. Anyway, get off my lawn. Let me now get into the number 1 worst episode of the original series, and that is Turnabout Intruder, which I will hold as being the worst episode of the original series, and one of the worst of the entire franchise. Because, and I've talked about this episode at length, I did an hour-long video, like really delving into how sexist this episode is, and yes, it was sexist. They weren't trying to say this one character was just insane. No, if you read pay attention to what they're actually saying in this episode, they are very clearly, undeniably, and I've gone a deeper dive into this when I could. I'm not going to could do a huge deep dive into this in this video because I don't have the time for it. If you want to know, if you disagree with me and you want to know why you're wrong, you can watch my 60-minute long video where I get into greater detail about this. But it's clearly saying that women are incapable of leadership roles and that they should just be happy in the kitchen. Like, be happy. Why can't you're unhappy with your womanhood if you want to be like a starship captain or a leader or be respected in a profession? Like, that's not your bid in life. I'm sorry, your bid in life is to stay in the kitchen and serve us men and shut your pretty mouth. That is what this episode is saying. It's made it very clear that and plus, they use the word hysteria, in fact, several times to describe the woman who wants to be a starship captain in this episode. She's hysteric. Now, hopefully I don't have to explain the historical context of why that's so fucked up. I don't give a fuck if this episode came out in the 60s or not. I don't care. And this bullshit should never be made, and I do not give it a pass. Oh, because people were more sexist back then, so it's okay. No, it's fucking not. Stuff like this, it's just not. And so the woman who takes over Captain Kirk's body, they make it clear that she's incapable of being a starship captain because she's overly emotional. Not because this individual happens to have mental issues, it's because she's a woman. They make that very clear. And also, speaking of overacting, you got some of the worst ham acting in Kirk William Shatner does when he's trying to play this hysteric woman who is like, "You will listen to me? You will listen to what I'm saying?" And then in one scene, of course, he's filing his nails. When he's playing the woman who's taking over his body, he's filing his nails. You get it? Get it? Get it? Because all women file with sorry. Yes, and it's a body swap episode of the worst kind, where it's just the whole point of it is that women should just stay in the kitchen. It's very clear, and it disgusts me that this episode is a part of the Star Trek canon. And it should be forgotten. In fact, it has been retconned because there are future installments of Star Trek made it clear that women can and in fact are revered starship captains even before this episode takes place. So this basically was retconned out of canon, as it jolly well fucking should be. And this episode should hopefully be forgotten as well because of William Shatner's ridiculous overacting. But anyway, this is by far the worst episode of the original and the animated series. So that is it for my top 40 worst episodes, not top 40, top 20, sorry. Worst episodes of the original animated series. Thank you so much for watching this video. Please, if you enjoyed this video, please be sure to subscribe, leave a like, all that sort of jazz. And if you did enjoy this, please check out my channel as I do the top 30 best episodes of the original series. If you thought this video was too negative, then you can check that one out while I'll be more positive. And check out my channel for many more Star Trek videos at the moment, covering Star Trek Strange New Worlds, also covering other shows like Star Wars Rebels, The Expanse, Westworld, and more. So be sure to subscribe so you can keep up with all of that. And thanks a lot for watching.